Once upon a time, there lived a woman whose baby was born holding a strange ring in her hand. It was a gold wedding ring with an inscription that left everyone stunned: fire, blood, and death. That was what the inscription on the ring said, as the midwives all shuddered at the sight of it. The room fell into a stillness that no one could explain, followed by an angry outburst by the baby's father, who accused his wife of bringing forth evil into the world. Obi accused his wife Chi of being a witch. He warned her sternly to get rid of the baby. Obi could not understand why the baby held a strange ring in her hand, and the inscription even made it worse. He vowed never to have anything to do with the child and ordered his wife to get rid of her. News of the strange baby spread around the village, and the villagers all insisted that the evil baby be banished. Some said that she was married to an evil spirit who had come to reclaim her through the child. Others whispered that she was impregnated by the evil spirit who put in her the messenger of death. The next morning, she was awoken by a loud noise outside. The angry villagers had gathered, holding sticks and insisting that the baby be cast into the evil forest. Obi, her husband, stormed into her hut and grabbed the baby from the mat. "The people have decided," he said coldly, revealing that the baby must be cast away or else they all be cursed and killed. She collapsed to her knees in tears. "You can't do this. She's just a child," she said to her husband Obi, who did not flinch. He snatched the baby from her arms and stormed out angrily, ignoring the cries of his wife, who pleaded with him to save their child. Obi marched to the evil forest with the angry mob. His wife Chi ran after them, barefoot, wailing and crying for her child, but the villagers blocked her path. The same people who had once celebrated her pregnancy now turned on her like a pack of wolves. She could not believe her eyes. After 3 miscarriages, this was the only child that had agreed to stay. Her miracle baby, the child who she spoke to for 9 months, pleading with her to stay. Here she was, looking at her husband, about to dump her baby in the evil forest. She begged and cried, but no one listened to her, not even her husband. Hours later, her husband returned home alone. He refused to speak to his wife, despite knowing the pain that she was going through. That night, she screamed until her voice broke. She tore her clothes and beat her chest, but nothing she did brought her baby back. She became a shadow of herself. She stopped eating and locked herself up in her room. Days passed, and her sister Ife came to check on her. She met Chi in a very devastating state and decided to stick by her side. Ife was her comfort when no one else cared. The villagers all kept away from her, whispering amongst themselves that she was cursed. Even her husband Obi began to spend less time at home. He stopped looking her in the eye and completely stopped talking to her. Eventually, he stopped coming home and moved in with his mother, who convinced him to leave his wife. Mama Obi, who once loved Chi like a daughter, turned her back on her, calling her a witch. She even went as far as claiming that Chi's previous miscarriages were never natural. With a tongue soaked in venom, she whispered to anyone who cared to listen that she had offered those unborn children as sacrifices to dark spirits, one after the other, just to gain power. According to her, the child born with the cursed ring was never meant to live amongst humans. That baby was not a blessing, she would hiss. It was an abomination, a spirit of death in a child's body. And she called her a witch, one who had used forbidden charms and blood-soaked incantations to trap her son in marriage. With cruel convictions, she insisted that her son Obi had been under a spell all along. He was blind, she declared to the village women, held captive by her witchcraft for years. But now, the scales have fallen from my son's eyes and he's finally free. And just like that, the fire of hatred spread from ear to ear until the entire village began to look at Chi not as a grieving mother, but as a dangerous woman who had brought evil into their midst. No one defended Chi, not even the elders, as everyone kept their distance from her and treated her like a plague. Children were instructed not to look at her, and the women held a meeting to remove her name from the Women's Council. The villagers no longer looked at Chi as one of them. They looked at her like a disease, something to avoid at all costs. When she walked down the village path, people would cross to the other side of the road, as if her shadow could poison the air. Mothers pulled their children close, whispering warnings under their breath. Young men spat in the dust behind her, and at the market, no one would sell to her. She would stand there under the scorching sun, her wrapper drenched in sweat, her eyes heavy with hunger and shame. Yet, the women behind the stalls pretended not to see her. Some turned their backs on her, others simply walked away. She would stretch out her hand with trembling fingers, holding out money that no one would touch, until her arm dropped and her soul ached with humiliation. To them, she was cursed. To her, she was invisible. And so, she began to starve, not from lack of food, but from the absence of compassion. The pain wasn't just in her stomach, it was in her heart, breaking over and over again with every pair of eyes that refused to meet hers. And so, she lived like a ghost in her own village, shunned, hated, and forgotten by the same people who she once called her own. The same people who had once danced at her wedding, who had blessed her swollen belly and rubbed her feet during pregnancy, now turned their backs on her as though she were a ghost that haunted their conscience. She became a woman without a people, a soul buried alive in the soil of rejection. Only her younger sister Ife remained. She clung to Chi like a lifeline, refusing to let the world swallow what was left of her. Ife came every morning with warm food wrapped in banana leaves, setting it down gently beside Chi without a word. She swept the compound, fetched water, sat by her silently when words had no use. She did not ask Chi to be strong. She simply stayed, and in Ife's presence, she wasn't just cursed. She was not forgotten. She was just a sister. And in that quiet loyalty, Ife became the single light in the long cold night that Chi's life had become. But soon, the whispers began to spread, not just about Chi, but about Ife too. They said that she was foolish for standing beside her cursed sister, that she would attract the same misfortune, that the gods would punish her for harboring a woman that the spirits had rejected. The market women called her blind. The elders said that she was naive. Even the man that she loved, the one who had once sworn to marry her, stood before her one evening and begged her to choose. "It's either me or her," he said, his voice low but firm. "You need to let her go, Ife. She will ruin your life too." Ife's heart broke in that moment, not just for herself, but for her sister. She looked him in the eye and whispered, "If loving my sister ruins me, then let me be ruined with honor." And just like that, he walked away. No goodbye, no wedding, no second thought. But still, Ife stayed. People continued to warn her. They pulled her aside in corners, shook their heads in pity, and said that she was wasting her youth. They told her that her loyalty was foolishness, that she was already dead. "Why bury yourself with her?" they asked. But Ife refused to listen, because she remembered the sister who once braided her hair, the sister who fought off their father's beatings to protect her, the sister who sang to her when she had nightmares. That sister was still in there, somewhere, beneath the silence, the sorrow and the shadows, and so she stayed, loyal, unshaken and unmoved, even if it cost her everything. Months turned into years, and the villagers gradually forgot about the incident. One night, whilst everyone slept, lightning struck the village square, splitting the old Iroko tree into two, and blood began to pour out of the ancient tree. The villagers woke up in the morning to the devastating sight. Nobody had ever seen anything like it. The ground was soaked with blood, thick and red, as if the tree had been alive all along. The chief called the elders. The priests lit 7 lamps and poured libations at the shrine. They chanted, they wept, they made sacrifices of white goats and kola nuts, but the gods said nothing. They inquired again and again. Still, the gods remained silent. That silence terrified everyone more than the blood. Then came the fire. It started from the yam barns, then the cassava farms. The flames danced without warning, without smoke, and without mercy. One by one, the farmlands of the village went up in flames. No one saw who lit them, and just as the flames died out, another horror began. Every animal in the village, every goat, every cow, every chicken was found dead by dawn. Some foamed at the mouth, others were twisted in death, eyes wide, and their legs bent in unnatural angles. The villagers trembled. Even the most stubborn elders began to panic. The chief priest declared that it was not ordinary. It was a punishment, he said to the people, who all shook in fear, but no one knew why and how to stop it, until the oldest woman in the village stood up and reminded the villagers of the cursed child, the one that they cast away, the one born with the cursed ring. A cold silence swept through the gathering as she continued to speak. We cast her out into the forest, and now fire, blood, and death have come for us, exactly as the ring warned. The entire crowd trembled as people began to murmur between themselves. Evening came, and a small crowd gathered in front of Chi's compound. No one dared to enter, as they all stood there, deliberating on how to approach Chi. Just as they stood there, the door creaked open, and Chi's sister Ife walked out of the hut to meet the entire village gathered in front of her sister's hut. Shocked and confused, she asked what they wanted, and the chief of the village stepped forward and began to speak. We have come to ask for the ring. Our village is under a curse, and we believe that the ring can save us all. Chi, on hearing this from inside, rushed out of her hut angrily to meet with them. She could not believe that the same people who banished her daughter to the evil forest were now standing before her hut, requesting for the ring that they had once called cursed. Chi had not felt this angry in her entire life. Her blood boiled as she stormed into her hut to grab a kettle of boiling water. She ran after the villagers, threatening to burn them all, as the villagers all scampered for their dear lives. She felt so insulted. She stood barefoot at the edge of her compound, breathing heavily, holding the kettle of steaming water in her hand like a weapon. The villagers, the same one who once called her cursed and spat at her feet, blocking her from saving her dear baby, we are now here, scattered like rats in the rain, asking for the cursed ring that led to her daughter's death. She could not believe her eyes. She returned to her hut, and her sister Ife tried to pacify her, but she was so livid. They killed my child and called me a witch. Now they are here, seeking for my help. She spoke out with a voice that held 1,000 pains. As she sat there, she heard a knock on her door. It was Obi, her ex-husband, who left her years ago and moved on with another woman. She had gone through the worst phase of her life because of him. She never expected that he would one day knock on her door, but here he was, face down like a guilty puppy, about to plead with Chi to save his newborn child. The child, who was at the brink of death, following the recent curse that had plagued the entire village. She stood there and watched as Obi went down on his knees and cried out to her to save his child. The memories of her own pain rushed back like a wind as tears pooled in her eyes as she began to spit venom at him. "You are all murderers!" she screamed, her voice cracked from years of swallowed pain. "You let my baby die. You called her a demon, and now that your baby is cursed and your gods have refused to answer, you dare come here?" Obi knelt in front of her, broken, as he asked for her forgiveness. "Chi, please, we were blind. We were afraid. Forgive us. Tell us what to do." She could not believe her eyes. "Forgive you?" she spat as tears streamed down her cheek. "Can your forgiveness bring back my child? Can your tears return her smile?" When she cried, I was the only one who heard her, and you, Obi, threw her away like trash. You let my baby die, and you have the effrontery to come here and plead with me to save your own child. Get out!" she screamed as she grabbed the huge stick and chased him out of her house. The entire village was now in chaos as their children continued to fall sick one after the other. The gods had still not spoken to the people, and the chief priest did not know what to do. He wanted the ring, hoping that wielding it will help him figure out the solution to their problem, but she was not willing to tell them if she was with the ring. Obi could not remember if the baby was with the ring on that fateful day when he threw her into the evil forest, so they decided to go into the forest to search for the baby's remains, hoping to find the ring. Everyone was so desperate as they feared the true extent of the curse. They arrived the forest and searched for hours. All they found were the baby's clothes mixed with the earth, but the ring was nowhere to be found. The people at this point concluded that she kept back the ring on that fateful day, so they connived amongst themselves. A secret meeting was held as the chief priest addressed the people. Torches burned into the night as a plan was hatched. If Chi will not hand over the ring, then we must take it ourselves, the chief priest muttered as the people nodded their heads in agreement. However, one elder hesitated and spoke out. "You want us to break into her home after all that we did to her?" Another elder replied him saying, "Did we not already break her heart? We threw her child away, so this is nothing compared to what we have done already. If this act will save our village, then we must do it and keep sentiments aside." And so the people agreed and chose 7 men for the mission. That night, under the cover of darkness, the men crept silently towards Chi's compound, armed with sticks and weapons to defend themselves. They broke into her hut, determined to find the ring at all costs. However, when they came face to face with Chi, they could not believe what she did to them. Chi stood in the center of the room, holding the ring in her hand. The men lunged forward, determined to take the ring from her. However, before they could grab the ring from her hand, she dropped it into her mouth and swallowed it. In that moment, the entire atmosphere changed. She spoke a word and the men froze on the spot, unable to move an inch. Terrified for their dear lives, they began to plead for mercy. "We are sorry, we had no choice. The curse is growing," they said to Chi, who chuckled, not a laugh of joy, but one soaked in sorrow. "You want the ring now? After you killed the one who brought it? After you tore her from my arms?" she said to the men, who stood there like statues. Her sister Ife could not believe what was happening. The 7 men stood frozen, eyes wide, mouths open, trapped not by ropes or chains, but by Chi's word alone. One command had stopped them mid-breath. Chi's body began to glow faintly. The air around her thick with power. Her head danced as if caught in a wind that no one else could feel. The ring she had swallowed pulsed inside of her like a buried sun, and every breath she took seemed to stir the walls. "I warned you," she said in a low, trembling voice. "You feared what you didn't understand. You cursed what was sacred, and now you want salvation from the very woman who you slaughtered her spirit." Her sister Ife tried to calm her down, but she yelled at her angrily as she commanded her to leave. Ife, in that moment, turned towards the door and began to leave. She tried so hard to stop herself, but nothing that she did worked as her body moved on its own, as if controlled by an outside force. All this happened on her sister's command. She walked out of the house involuntarily and noticed that the sky had begun to change. Dark clouds rolled over the village as thunder grumbled in long, hungry growls. She sat in her living room angry. She had bottled up this anger for years, watching as the villagers hurt her in ways that she could not explain. She had the power to end their suffering, but the memories of the past blocked any form of compassion that she had left in her heart. Now, seeing the extent of her power, she decided to pay the villagers back in their own coin. She got out of her hut and began to walk majestically to the village square, her eyes burning with fury. The entire village gathered outside, watching in terror as birds fell dead from the sky and the air grew too heavy to breathe. No one dared to approach her, not even the chief priest, who feared what she could do to him. She was now the most powerful person in the entire village. She walked with her head held high as the people gathered on the side of the road, trembling and pleading for mercy. But she was far too deep in her quest for revenge. She arrived the village square, ready to unleash her wrath upon the entire land. The people gathered around and watched as they prayed for the gods to save them. But the gods were silent, as if endorsing their suffering. Women remained home with their sick children who were on the brink of death. Even Obi sat in his hut broken, as he watched his newborn baby suffer from a strange ailment. She raised her hand to the heavens, her eyes ablaze with power and pain, ready to unleash the fury that she had carried for years. The clouds above her crackled with lightning, thunder roared like ancient drums, and the villagers, paralyzed by fear, began to scream. The sky darkened further as she began to cry out in pain. Just as she was about to voice out her curse, she felt something that she could not ignore. Tiny fingers gripping her ankle as she stood there frozen, her hands suspended mid-air as her breath caught in her chest. Slowly she looked down, and what she saw stole the air from her lungs. A little girl kneeling at her feet. The child looked up at her with innocent eyes. "Mama?" the girl whispered, her voice as fragile as soft breeze. She fell to her knees, her mouth trembling as she asked the girl what she just called her. In that moment, her sister Ife stepped forward and revealed that the girl was her daughter. She could not believe her eyes. She could not believe that her daughter was alive. For all these years, she had mourned a child that she thought had died. Little did she know that her own sister saved her baby from the evil forest on that fateful day. She was on her way to visit her sister when she saw the huge crowd gathered in front of Chi's hut. What was more shocking was seeing her sister's husband betray their own child in such a way. So, Ife disguised herself and marched with them to the forest, watching painfully as Obi threw the baby away like trash. Ife's heart broke to hear the baby land on the forest floor like dirt. She hid in the corner as the people dispersed, leaving the baby alone in the forest. Once the coast was clear, Ife picked up the baby from the forest and took her to the nearby village, where she knew of a woman who would look after the baby like her own. Ife told the woman the entire story, and the woman was more than willing to care for the child. So Ife returned to look after her sister, praying daily for God to give her sister the strength to overcome. However, seeing the burning rage in her sister's eyes on that day, Ife had no other option but to go bring her daughter, knowing that only this would quench the burning rage in her sister's heart. And just as she predicted, her plan worked. The dark skies cleared as she held her daughter close to her chest. She looked up at her sister Ife, thanking her for saving her daughter. The people stood there amazed at what was happening. For all these years, they never knew that the baby they abandoned was the child sent to save them from the curse that had plagued their land. The entire village went down on their knees as they began to plead for mercy. She was too enraged to forgive them, but her daughter looked her in the eyes and pleaded for her to save the people. She, despite being too hurt, could not ignore her daughter's plea. She knew that she had the power to break the curse with only her words. So, she stood up slowly, her child still in her arms, as she turned to face the entire village and began to speak. "I asked for your mercy, and you gave me torment. I asked for your compassion, and you fed me hatred. But today, mercy has chosen me to bring my daughter back." She took a deep breath as she looked up at the sky and declared, "Let this be the last time that a child be cast away into the evil forest," she said to the chief, who she told to abolish the law in her presence before she leaves the curse that had kept them bound. The chief, desperate and terrified, abolished the law in her presence, and she lifted the curse before their eyes. The entire village went down on their knees as they apologized to Chi for all that they did to her. Chi became so powerful as her words held so much power. She became the most respected woman in the entire village, who commanded even the respect of the village chief. Her ex-husband Obi, as well as his mother, regretted all that they did to her as they saw Chi rise from the ashes like a phoenix. Chi lived the remaining of her days happy and fulfilled with her daughter, who stayed by her side all the way. She used her words to bless her sister Ife, who never lacked any good thing in her life. The lesson to be learned from these stories is that rejection, hatred, and fear of the unknown can lead even the most civilized people to commit unforgivable acts. But love, loyalty, and compassion have the power to preserve what is sacred, even in secret. In a world quick to condemn what it cannot explain, we are reminded that true strength lies not in the noise of the crowd, but in the quiet faith of one person who chooses to stand by the truth. Chi's story teaches us that no matter how deeply we are wronged, mercy has the final say, and those who are cast aside today may be the ones the world kneels before tomorrow. I hope you enjoyed the story.